but not the major cause of them. What caused the major cause of what made them fall into the pit and drown in the water. Uh, the most likely culprit was the water pump that they were running at the time, probably pushing carbon monoxide into the pit, causing their deaths. 3 days after the accident, Robert Dunfeld leased the island and used a 70-ton digging crane and clam bucket to dig out the pit to 134 feet and to a width of 100 feet. They also had to build a causeway to the island that still exists today, but in the end they still found no treasure. In 1967, Daniel Blankenship and David Tobias formed the Triton Alliance Limited and purchased most of the island. And then in 1971 they excavated a 235-foot shaft, and after lowering cameras into the shaft, they recorded images of what looked like human remains, wood cribbing, tools, and treasure chests. The images are not clear enough to be sure, and they have no real scale to determine the size of the objects. But the footage is interesting, and before the articles and artifacts in the pictures could be confirmed, the tunnel collapsed, and excavation was again abandoned, and later they would redig the shaft to 181 feet, but ran out of funds, and the partnership collapsed. Lack of funds and legal battles stopped any more excavations in the pit until 2008, when partners from Michigan bought out David Tobias' remaining shares, and now with Daniel Blankenship have started to resume excavations in the year of 2009. Of course, the biggest problem for those who try to claim the treasure is the flooding and the collapsing of the tunnels. And in 1850, some treasure hunters noticed that the water in the pit rose and fell with the tide. And when they explored the nearby Smith's Cove, they found an artificial beach with a coconut fiber layer up to 1 foot thick under the sand, acting like a sponge, keeping the treasure pit flooded when the dirt was removed. And the nearest coconut tree was 2,000 miles away. And there are at least 2 tunnels leading to the pit to keep it flooded. But attempts to stop the flow of water from the flood tunnels have failed. And this might be because there's more tunnels, or just the fact that if it's somehow more natural than an actual flood tunnel. But carbon dating of the coconut fiber have given dates from 1130 AD to 1374 AD. But carbon dating is not the most accurate way of dating, regardless of what some scientists may say. But sometimes it can be used as a guidepost in a general approximation of age. And sometimes it's more accurate, other times it's not. But no lost treasure story is complete without ghosts. And Oak Island has a few ghost legends. Now, Christians have a bit of a different view on ghosts than others. And those of us who don't avoid the subject of ghosts altogether realize that ghost apparitions can be one of two things. Foremost, they're demonic entities manifesting themselves or imitating humans. Second, some ghost encounters might actually be someone seeing into the past, kind of like a time anomaly, where you can see an event as it happened in the past and it's replaying itself. In a way, it's not unlike what the prophets and maybe even John the Apostle saw when they saw the future, except in this you're seeing events in the past. But when those events kind of happen, there's very limited, there is either no or very limited interaction. In other words, you're seeing something, but it's not really interacting with you, or very limited interaction if it's some type of time slip. Whereas if things are directed at you and you're seeing it and it's interacting with you a lot, that would be a demonic spirit. Peggy Adams' family had worked on Oak Island as caretakers in the late 1930s, and when Peggy was 4 years old, she was playing outside one winter day when she saw many men wearing red coats and hats that looked to her like firemen's hats. She came and told her mother what she had seen and took her to the spot where she saw them, and it lay between the muddy pit and Smith's Cove. There were no footprints in the snow, and years later, No footprints in the snow, and no evidence that anyone had walked through there. And years later, when Peggy Adams visited a museum when she was much older, recognized the men she had saw as British soldiers dressed in uniforms that were in use from 1754 to 1783. There's also a tale of Herman Westhaver and Amos Smith, who alleged finding a box with charts and stones on an island 15 miles away from Oak Island. James Amos, grandson to Amos Smith, claimed he saw the charts as a child at his grandfather's house, and he claims they go into great detail of when and how they built the treasure pit that they had built on Oak Island. Unfortunately, these papers were inadvertently destroyed after the death of his grandfather. Herman Westhaver claimed that they were led to the box by a ghostly pirate ship. And in 2007, people taking pictures on Oak Island found many pictures with orbs in them. Orbs are spheres of light that may indicate paranormal activity, but there are also ways for orbs to appear that are natural phenomena, such as dust and insects. And I'm not claiming to be an expert, but the pictures look like real orbs versus the natural ones in the picture. In the end, you can never really validate any ghost story or phenomenon, but they're always good to add as an interesting side note to this interesting story. These many years, people have tried to uncover this treasure, giving up their time and money, and in some cases their lives, to acquire something that may not even exist, or at the very least was beyond their power to attain. But Jesus Christ is a treasure easy to uncover, and well within our power to attain. With the power of our decisions and the power of our acceptance of His sacrifice. I thank you for listening, and may God bless and keep you.
The devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. I also saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne. Look, God's dwelling is with men, and He will live with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them, and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will exist no longer. Grief, crime, and pain will exist no longer, because the previous things have passed away.
The Revelation 13 podcast is hosted by Mike Hopwood and is a podcast dedicated to the study of end-time events, news events, and ancient mysteries.